Amid the lively chatter of wedding guests and the clinking of glasses, I stood weighed down by 13 years. It felt like an oppressive cloak, one I couldn't take off. Olivia consumed my thoughts, even as the music blared, the upbeat melody coaxing people to move without a second thought. My ex, with her usual stride, made her way toward me as though she owned the room. She hadn't changed much, save for a sharper hairstyle, blonde strands still falling just over her shoulders. And those eyes that had once torn me apart. I had once felt deeply for her, those emotions a mix of love and pain. We made promises when we were young and idealistic, pledging to stay together forever. But then reality set in, doctor's visits, endless waiting, and the silence that followed. Her voice, cold as ice, had betrayed me. After we couldn't conceive, she left, hurling accusations my way, blaming me for failing her. "Without a family, you're not a real man," she had said before walking out of my life 13 years ago. And I had never been the same. I hadn't seen her since then. This wedding, a reunion for an old university friend, had brought us together again. I came expecting to reminisce, not for this. She spotted me across the room and approached with determined steps, her heels clicking on the floor like she was marching into battle. I stood with my hands in my pockets, trying to appear unaffected, even though my heart raced. She stopped just a few feet away, wearing that smirk, the one I had always despised, the one that declared she had already won. "Well, well," she began, her voice oozing the same arrogance. "Still single, huh? No one to tie you down? No responsibilities?" She paused, tossing her hair back dramatically like she was in some movie scene, then continued. "My life's different now. I'm with Richard, successful, handsome, everything you weren't. And our son, Caleb, he's a genius, just like his father. Top of his class, plays piano like a pro. You should see him." She smiled, a sharp, almost vindictive sound escaping her. I stood there, letting her rattle on, letting her build her little tower of pride. I could have interrupted, could have said something, but I didn't. I just let her bask in what she thought was her triumph over me. She went on, listing Caleb's grades, Richard's accomplishments, how perfect her life had become after she left me. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, though inside I felt a familiar anger rise. I pushed it back, waiting for her to pause, to catch her breath. And when she did, I saw my opening. I shifted slightly, just enough to glance over my shoulder, and lifted my hand in a small motion. "Nice," I said, my voice calm. "Here's my son." The words hung in the air, simple but heavy, like a thunderclap. I watched her face change. The smirk froze, then faded, replaced by confusion as her gaze shot past me. She focused on Adrian, standing a few feet behind, chatting with some cousins near the dessert table. At 12, he was already taller than most kids his age, with my hazel eyes and a smile that was entirely his own. Olivia's mouth dropped open, but no words came out. Her hands, which had been animatedly gesturing a moment before, began to tremble, slowly at first, then more violently, as she took in the sight of him. I could see the gears turning in her mind, trying to make sense of this. Because this wasn't part of her story. She had spent years convincing herself, and anyone who'd listen, that I was a failure. That I was the reason we never had a family. But now here I was, standing tall, with a son she couldn't deny. "Adrian," I called casually. He looked up, flashed his easy smile, and walked over. He stopped beside me, hands in his pockets, just like mine. I draped an arm around his shoulders. Olivia's eyes darted between us, her breath catching as if she had forgotten how to breathe. "This is my boy," I said, looking directly at her, letting her see every ounce of pride I felt in that moment. Her face went pale, the color draining from her like water from a cracked glass. The confident armor she had worn for so long shattered. For the first time in all the years I'd known her, Olivia looked utterly lost, as if the foundation of her perfect world had crumbled beneath her. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. The truth was standing right beside me, living, breathing proof that everything she had believed was wrong. She muttered something, maybe a half-formed question, but I just smiled, small and tight, and let her flounder. Adrian tilted his head, curious but unfazed. I could tell Adrian didn't fully grasp the weight of the moment. Not yet. But I did. I felt it deep in my bones, the rush of seeing Olivia crumble, not because I had planned it, but because life has a way of righting itself. She had left me, making me feel like nothing. Yet here I was, whole, happy, with a family she could only dream of. The music continued, the party swirling around us, but for that brief moment, it was just me, my son, and Olivia, frozen in astonishment. And damn, it felt incredible. Then Caleb broke the tension, his voice cutting through the air, naive and cheerful. "Oh, Dad! That's the boy from the violin event, right?" He pointed at Adrian, eager and oblivious. I almost laughed. Richard's frown deepened, but Olivia flinched as though she had been slapped. I couldn't help the quiet chuckle that escaped me. She snapped her attention back to me, her voice sharp as she tried to regain control. "What's so funny?" she demanded. I shrugged, still grinning. "Nothing. Just something amusing," I said casually. "Adrian won a big violin contest last month. Got his name in the news and everything. I believe Caleb was there too, watching my son grab the prize." Olivia's mouth tightened, like she had just tasted something bitter. Richard placed a protective hand on Caleb's shoulder and spoke firmly. "Come on! Let's go!" But Olivia didn't move. She just stood there, staring at me, Adrian, and Sophia as if seeing ghosts. Caleb, however, glanced at Adrian again, his eyes narrowing slightly. I caught it, admiration, yes, but envy too. My son had something his didn't, and it showed. Olivia's carefully crafted world, her perfect little life, wasn't the only one in the spotlight anymore. She glanced at Richard, then back at me. Her voice, barely above a whisper, trembled as she asked, You have a son?" It wasn't a question anymore. It was a truth she couldn't escape. I nodded slowly, deliberately. "Yes, Olivia, I do." And just like that, everything she had built her life around cracked. Right there, in the middle of that joyous wedding, while my family stood firm beside me, hers unraveled. The party buzzed on, laughter, music, the clatter of plates, but all I could focus on was Olivia, pale-faced, her eyes fixed on Adrian like he was an unsolvable riddle. And Adrian? He was completely oblivious, licking frosting off his fingers, unaware of the storm he had just stirred. Richard tried again to pull Olivia away, his voice tight. "Let's go!" But she didn't move. She couldn't. She was frozen, stuck in that moment, unable to tear her eyes away from my son. I could see the realization dawning on her, the years she spent running finally catching up. Then Caleb broke the silence again, his voice high and innocent, cutting through the tension. "Dad, that's the boy from the violin competition, right?" He tugged at Richard's sleeve, pointing at Adrian with a mix of awe and something sharper, envy, maybe. I couldn't stop the chuckle that slipped out, low and rough. Oh, this was too much. Olivia's head whipped toward me, her eyes narrowing as though she still wanted to claw her way out of this. "What's so funny?" she snapped, her voice fragile. I shrugged again, casually. "Nothing. Just strange," I replied, nodding toward Adrian. "You didn't know, did you?" Her face said it all, tight lips, furrowed brow. She didn't answer, but I could see the tension in her. Adrian had made headlines a month before, winning a big international violin competition, the kind where they print your picture in the paper and give you a trophy bigger than your head. I had been there, front row, cheering him on while Sophia snapped pictures. Caleb must have been there too, in the audience, watching my son take the stage and walk away with the prize. And Olivia, the woman who had spent years bragging about her genius son, had no idea. Her child had been outdone by the boy she never imagined I could have. The irony was thick, and I let her hang there, watching her squirm. Richard tightened his grip on Caleb's shoulder, but his gaze was fixed on Olivia now, sharp and unyielding.